Hi, it's Anna with Anna and Tanya's reading of Terry Pratchett's The Night Watch. We're on part 20, racing towards the end. Things have gotten a bit metaphysical. Let's see what happens next. It was a beguiling theory that might have arisen in the minds of Wiglet and Waddy, and yes, even in the not overly exercised mind of Fred Colin, and as far as Vimes could understand it, it went like this. 1. Supposing the area behind the barricades was bigger than the area in front of the barricades, right? 2. Sort of, it had more people in it and more of the city, if you follow me. 3. Then, correct me if I'm wrong, Sarge, but that'd mean in a manner of speaking we are now in front of the barricades, am I right? 4. Then, as it were, it's not like we're rebelling, is it? 'Cause there's more of us, so the majority can't rebel, it stands to reason. 5. So that makes us the good guys. Obviously, we've been the good guys all along, but now it's be kind of official, right? Like mathematical? 6. So we thought we'd push on to Short Street and then we could nip down into Dimwell and up the other side of the river. 7. Are we going to get in trouble for this, Sarge? 8. You're looking at me in a funny way, Sarge. 9. Sorry, Sarge. Vimes, with an increasingly worried Fred Colin in front of him, and some other of the barricadiers standing around, as if caught in an illicit game of knocking on doors and running away, thought about this. The men watched him carefully in case of explosion. And it actually made a weird kind of logic if you didn't factor in considerations like real life and common sense. They'd worked hard. It was easy enough to block a street, heavens knew. You just nailed planks around a couple of wagons and piled it high with furniture and junk. That took care of the main streets, and with enough pushing you could move it forwards. As for the rest, it really hadn't been that hard. There had been a lot of small barricades in any case. The lads had simply joined them up, without anyone really noticing the People's Republic of Treacle Mine Road now occupied almost a quarter of the city. Vimes took a few deep breaths. Fred, he said. Yes, Sarge? Did I tell you to do this? No, Sarge. There's too many alleys. There's too many people, Fred. Colin brightened. Ah, well, there's more coppers too, Sarge. A lot of the lads found their way here. Good lads, too. And Sergeant Dickens, he knows about this stuff. He remembers the last time this happened, Sarge. So he asked every able-bodied man who knew how to use a weapon to muster up, Sarge. There's a lot of them, Sarge. We got an army, Sarge. This is how the world collapses, thought Vimes. I was just a young fool. I didn't see it like this. I thought Keel was leading the revolution. I wonder if that's what he thought, too. I'm back. All right. But I just wanted to keep a few streets safe. I just wanted to keep a handful of decent, silly people away from the dumb mobs and the mindless rebels and the idiot soldiery. I really, really hoped we could get away with it. Maybe the monks were right. Changing history is like damming a river. It'll find a way around. He saw Sam beaming among the men. Hero worship, he thought. That sort of thing can turn you blind. Any trouble? He said to Colin. Don't think anyone's worked out what's happening here, Sarge. There's been a lot of happening around Dolly's sisters and over that way. Cavalry charges and what have you. Hold on, here comes some more. A watchman had signaled from the top of the barricade. Vimes heard the commotion on the other side of the pile. More people running away from Dolly's sisters by the looks of it, said Colin. What do you want us to do, Sarge? Keep them out, thought Vimes. We don't know who they are. We can't let everyone in. Some of them will be trouble. The trouble is, I know what's going on out there. The city is a little slice of hell, and there's no real safety anywhere. And I know what I'm going to decide, because I watched me decide it. I don't believe this. I'm standing over there now, a kid who's still clean and pink and full of ideals, looking at me as if I'm some kind of hero. I don't dare not be. I'm going to make the stupid decision because I don't want to look bad in front of myself. Try explaining that to anyone who hasn't had a couple of drinks. All right, let them through, he said, but no weapons. Pass the word around. Take weapons off people, said Colin. Think about it, Fred. We don't want unmentionables in here, do we? Or soldiers in disguise? A man's got to be vouched for before he can carry arms. I ain't going to be stabbed in the back and the front at the same time. Oh, and Fred, I don't know if I can do this, and it probably won't last. But as far as I'm concerned, you're promoted to sergeant. Anyone who wants to argue about the extra stripe, tell him to argue with me. Fred Colin's chest, already running to fat, swelled visibly. Right, Sarge. Does that mean I still take orders from you? Right. I still take orders from you. Right. Don't move any more barricades. Fill up the alleys. Hold this line. Vimes, you come with me. I'll need a runner. Well, I'm pretty runny, Sarge, Nobby volunteered from somewhere behind him. Then what I want you to do, Nobby, is get out there and find out what's happening now. Sergeant Dickens turned out to be younger than Vimes remembered, but he was still close to retirement. He'd maintained a flourishing sergeant's moustache, waxed to points and clearly dyed, and the proper sergeant shape occasioned by means of undisclosed corsetry. He'd spent a lot of time in the regiments, Vime recalled, although he came from Lamadeus originally. The men found that out because he belonged to some druid religion so strict that they didn't even use standing stones. And they were strongly against swearing, which is a real handicap in a sergeant, or would be if sergeants weren't so good at improvising. He was currently in Welcome Soap, a continuation of Cable Street, and he had the army. It wasn't much of one. No two weapons were exactly alike, and most of them were not strictly speaking weapons. Vimes shuddered when he saw the crowd and had a flashback, which was probably a flash forward, to all the domestic disputes he'd attended over the years. You knew where you were with strictly speaking weapons when they came at you. It was the not strictly speaking ones that scared the khaki out of you when it scared the khaki out of a new recruit. It was the meat cleavers tied to poles. It was the long spikes and the meat hooks. This was, after all, the area of small traders, porters, butchers, and longshoremen. And so standing in raggedy lines in front of Vimes were men who, every day, peacefully and legally handled blades with... And so standing in raggedy lines in front of Vimes were men who, every day, peacefully and legally handled things with blades and spikes that made a mere sword look like a girl's hatpin. There were classic weapons, too. Men had come back from wars with their swords or their halberd. Weapons? God bless you, sir. No. Them's mementos. And the sword had probably been used to poke the fire, and the halberd had done duty as a support for one end of the washing line, and their original use had been forgotten. Until now. Vimes stared at the metalwork. All this lot would have to do to win a battle would be to stand still. If the enemy charged them hard enough, he'd come out the other side as minutes. Some of 'em are retired watchmen, sir, Dickens whispered. A lot of them have been in the regiments at one time or another, see? There's a few kids wanted to see some action. You know how it is. What do you think? I'd certainly hate to fight them, said Vimes. At least a quarter of the men had white hair, and more than a few were using their weapons as a means of support. Come to that, I'd hate to be responsible for giving them an order. If I said a boat turned to this lot, it'd be raining limbs. They're resolute, sir. Fair enough, but I don't want a war. Oh, it won't come to that, sir, said Dickens. I've seen a few barricades in my time. It generally ends peacefully. The new man takes over, people get bored, everyone goes home, see? But Winder is a netter, said Vimes. Tell me one that wasn't, sir, said Dickens. Sir, thought Vimes. Or sir, at least. And he's older than me. Oh well, I might as well be good at it. Sergeant, he said, I want you to pick 20 of the best men that have seen action. Men you can trust, and I want them down at Shambling Gate and alert. Dickens looked puzzled. But that's barred, sir, and it's right down behind us. It is. I thought maybe. Down at the gate, Sergeant, Vimes insisted. They're to watch for anyone sneaking up to unbar it, and I want the guard on the bridges to be strengthened. Put down caltrops on the bridge, string wires. I want anyone who tries to come at us over the bridge to have a really bad time, understand? Do you know something, sir? Said Dickens, with his head on one side. Let's just say I'm thinking like the enemy, shall we? Said Vimes. He took a step closer and lowered his voice. You know some history, Di. No one with an ounce of sense goes up against a barricade. You find the weakness. There's other gates down there, sir, said Dickens doubtfully. Yes, but if they take Shambling, they get into Elm Street and have a nice long gallop right into where we're not expecting them, said Vimes. But you are expecting them, sir. Vimes just gave him a blank look, which sergeants are quite good at deciphering. As good as done, sir, said Dickens happily. But I want a decent presence at all the barricades, said Vimes, and a couple of patrols that can go wherever there's trouble. Sergeant, you know how to do it. Right, sir. Dickens saluted smartly and grinned. He turned to the assembled citizenry. All right, you shower, he yelled. Some of you's been in the regiment, I know it. How many of you knows all the little angels? A few of the more serious class of mementos rose in the air. Very good. Already we has a choir. Now this is a soldier's song, see? You don't look like soldiers, but by the gods I'll see that you sound like 'em. We'll pick it up as we goes along. Right turn, march. All the little angels rise up, all the little angels rise up high. Sing it, you sons of mothers. The marchers picked up the response from those who knew it. How do they rise up, rise up, rise up? How do they rise up high? They rise heads up, heads up, heads up, sang out Dickens as they turned to the corner. Vimes listened as the refrain died away. That's a nice song, said young Sam, and Vimes remembered that he was hearing it for the first time. It's an old soldier song, he said. Really, Sarge? But it's about angels. Yes, thought Vimes, and it's amazing what bits of those angels cause to rise up as the song progresses. It's a real soldier song, sentimental with dirty bits. As I recall, they used to sing it after battles, he said. I've seen old men cry when they sing it, he added. Why? It sounds cheerful. They were remembering who they were not singing it with, thought Vimes. You'll learn. I know you will. After a while, the patrols came back. Major Mountjoy Standfast was bright enough not to ask for written reports. They took too long and weren't very well spelled. One by one, the men told the story. Sometimes Captain Wrangle, who was plotting things on the map, would whistle under his breath. It's huge, sir. It really is. Nearly a quarter of the city's behind barricades down there. The major rubbed his forehead and turned to Trooper Gabbitas, the last man in and the one who seemed to have taken pains to get the most information. They're all on a sort of a line, sir. So I rode up to the one on Hero Street with me helmet off and looking off duty sort of thing, and I asked what it was all about. A man shouted down that everything was all right, thank you very much, and they'd all finished up all the barricades for now. I said, what about law and order? And they said they've got plenty, thank you. No one fired at you? No, sir. Wish I could say the same about round here. People were throwing stones at me, and an old lady emptied a utensil all over me from her window. There's something else, sir. Out with it, man. I think I recognized a few people. Up in the barricades. They were some of ours, sir. Vimes shut his eyes in the hope that the world would be a better place. But when he opened them, it was still full of the pink face of only just Sergeant Cullen. Fred, he said, I wonder if you fully understand the basic idea here. The soldiers, that's the other people, Fred. They stay on the outside of the barricade. If they are inside, Fred, we don't, in any real sense, have a bloody barricade. Do you understand? Yes, sir, but you want to do a spell in a regiment, Fred, and one of the things I think you'll find is they're very hot on indeed is knowing who's on your side and who is not, Fred. But, sir, they are... I mean, how long have I known you, Fred? 2 or 3 days, sir. Right. Yeah, of course. Seems longer. So why, Fred, do I arrive here and find you led in what seems like a platoon? You haven't been thinking metaphysically again, have you? It started with Billy Wiglet's brothers, sir, said Colin nervously, and a few of his mates came with them, all local lads. And there's a lad Nancy Ball grew up with, and a bloke who's the son of Waddy's next-door neighbour who just used to go out drinking with. And then there's... How many, Fred? Said Vimes wearily. 60, sir. Might be a few more by now. And it doesn't occur to you that they might be part of some clever plan? No, Sarge, it never did, because I can't see Wally Wiglet being part of a clever plan, Sarge, on account of him not being much of a thinker, sir. They only allowed him to be in the regiment after he got someone to paint L and R on his boots. See, we know 'em all, Sarge. Most of the lads join up for a bit just to get out of the city and maybe show Johnny Foreigner who's boss. They never expected to have old grannies spitting on them in their own city, Sarge. That can get a lad down, that sort of thing. And getting cobblestones chucked at them, too, of course. Vimes gave in. It was all true. All right, he said. But if this goes on, everyone is going to be inside the barricade, Fred. And there could be worse ways of ending it, he thought. People had lit fires in the streets. Most cooking pots had been brought out. But most of the people were engaging in Ink-Morpork's traditional pastime, which was hanging around to see what had happened next. What's going to happen next, Sarge? I think they'll attack in 2 places, said Vimes. The cavalry will go right outside the city and try to come in through the shambling gate, because that'll look easy. And the soldiers and the rest of the watch who aren't on our side will probably creep across Misbegot Bridge under cover. Are you sure, sir? Positive, said Vimes. After all, it had already happened. Or something. He pinched the bridge of his nose. He couldn't quite remember when he'd slept last. Slept, not dozed or been unconscious. He knew his thinking was a little fuzzy around the edges. But he did know how the Treacle Mine Road barricade had been broken. It had been only one sentence in the history books, but he remembered it. Sieges that weren't broken by a treachery were breached by some small door around the back. It was a fact of history. But it won't be for an hour or two, he said aloud. We're not important enough. It's all been quiet down here. It's when they start to wonder why that the midden will hit the windmill. Lots of people are getting through, Sarge. Some of the men said they could hear screaming in the distance. People are just piling in. There's robberies and everything going on out there. Ms. Constable. Yes, Sarge? You know when you wanted to swing a club at that torturing bastard and I stopped you? Yes, Sarge? That's why, lad. Once we break down, it all breaks down. Yes, Sarge, but you do bop people over the head. Interesting point, Lance Constable. Logical and well made, too, and a clear tone of voice bordering on the bloody cheeky. But there's a big difference. And what's that, Sarge? You'll find out, said Vimes. And privately he thought the answer is, it's me doing it. I'll grant that it is not a good answer, because people like Carter use it too, but that's what it boils down to. Of course, it's also to stop me knifing them, and let's be frank, them knifing me. That's quite important too. Their walk had brought them to a big fire in the center of the street. A cauldron was bubbling on it, and people were queuing up, holding bowls. Smells good, he said to the figure, gently stirring the cauldron's contents with a ladle. Oh, it's you, Mr. Dibbler. It's called Victory Stew, Sergeant, said Dibbler. Tuppence a bowl or I'll cut my throat, eh? Close enough, said Vimes, and looked at the strange and, what was worse, occasionally hauntingly familiar lumps seething in the scum. What's in it? It's stew, explained Dibbler. Strong enough to put hairs on your chest. Yes, and I can see that some of those bits of meat have got bristles on them already. Right, that's how good it is. It looks very nice, said Sam weakly. You'll have to excuse the Lance Constable, Mr. Dibbler, said Vimes. The poor lad was brought up not to eat stew that winks at him. He sat down with his bowl and his back against the wall and looked up at the barricade. People had been busy. In truth, there wasn't much else to do. This one here, from side to side of Hero Street, was 14 feet high and even had a crude walkway. It looked businesslike. He leaned back and shut his eyes. There was a hesitant slurping sound beside him as young Sam tried the stew, and then, is it going to come down to fighting, Sarge? Yes, said Vimes without opening his eyes. Like, really fighting? Yep. But won't there be some talking first? Nope, said Vimes, trying to make himself comfortable. Maybe some talking afterwards. Seems the wrong way round. Yes, lad, but it's a tried and tested method. There was no further comment. Slowly, with the sounds of the street in his ears, Vimes slid into sleep. Major Mountjoy Standfast knew what would happen if he sent a message to the palace. What do I do now, sir? Was not something his lordship wanted to hear. It was not the sort of question a major was supposed to ask, given the original orders had been very clear. Barricades were to be torn down, rebels were to be repelled. Grasp the nettle firmly and all that. He had, as a child, grasped nettles firmly, and had sometimes had a hand the size of a small pig. There were deserters behind the barricade. Deserters! How did that happen? It was a huge barricade, and it was lined with armed men. There were deserters on it, and he had his orders. It was all clear. If only they'd, rebel. He'd sent Trooper Gavatas down there again, and by his account it seemed very peaceful. Normal city life appeared to be going on behind the barricade, which was more than you could say for the chaos outside it. If they'd fired on Gavatas or thrown things, that would have made it so much easier. Instead, they were acting, decently. That was no way for enemies of the state to behave. An enemy of the state was in front of the major now. Gavatas had not come back empty-handed. Caught it sneaking after me, he said. To the captive, he said, Been behind the barricade, haven't we, my lad? Can it speak? Said the major, staring at the thing. There's no need to be like that, said Nobby Nobbs. It's a street urchin, sir, said the trooper. The major stared at all he could see of the prisoner, which was an oversized helmet and a nose. Get it something to stand on, will you, Captain? He said, and waited while a stool was found. It did not, all things considered, improve manners. It just gave rise to questions. It's got a watch badge, trooper. Is it some kind of mascot? Carved it myself at a soap, said Nobby, so I can be a copper. Why, said the major. There was something about that apparition that, despite the urgency, called for a kind of horrified yet fascinated study. But I'm thinking of going for a soldier when I grow up, Nobby went on, giving the major a happy grin. Much better pickings the way things are going. I'm afraid you're not tall enough, said the major quickly. Don't see why not. The enemy reaches all the way down to the ground, said Nobby. Anyway, people are lying down when you get their boots off. Old Sconner says the money's in the teeth and the earrings, but I say every man's bound to have a pair of boots, right? Of course, there's a lot of bad teeth around these days, and false teeth makers are always demand a decent set. Do you mean to tell me that you want to join the army just to loot the battlefields? Said the Major, completely shocked. A little lad like you? Once when old Sconner was sober for 2 days together, he made me a little set of soldiers, said Nobby. And they had these little boots that you could... Shut up, said the Major. Take off, and tiny, tiny little wooden teeth that you could... Will you shut up, said the Major. Have you no interest in honor, glory, love of the city? Dunno. Can you get much of for 'em? Said Nobby. They are priceless. Oh, well, in that case, I'll stick with boots. It's all the same to you, said Nobby. You can sell 'em for 10 pence a pair if you know the right shop. Look at Trooper Gabbatas there, said the Major, now quite upset. 20 years' service, a fine figure of a soldier. He wouldn't stoop to stealing the boots of a fallen enemy. Would you, Trooper? No, sir. Mugs game, sir, said Trooper Gabbatas. Got a footnote. And this was true. Don't bother with the boots, would have been Trooper Gabbatas's advice, had he been inclined to part with it. You need to bribe someone on the baggage carts to build up stock, and when all's said and done, you'll only make a few dollars. Stick to jewelry. It's portable. Trooper Gabbatas had seen too many battlefields up close to use the word glory without wincing. Right. Yes, said the Major. You could learn a lot from men like Trooper Gabbatas, young man. By the sound of it, your time with the rebels has filled your head with very wrong ideas indeed. I ain't a rebel, Nobby shouted. Don't you go calling me a rebel. I ain't a rabble. I'm an egg-boar pork lad, I am, and proud of it. Ha, you're so wrong. I've never been a rebel, and you're cruel to say so. I'm an honest lad, I am. Big tears began to run down his cheeks, washing aside the grime, to reveal the lower strata of grime beneath. The Major had no experience with this sort of thing. Every available orifice on the lad's face seemed to be gushing. He looked for help to Gabbatas. You're a married man, aren't you, Trooper? What are we supposed to do now? I could give him a clout alongside the ear, sir, said Trooper Gabbatas. That's very unfeeling, soldier. Look here, I had a handkerchief on me somewhere. I have my own wiper, thank you very much. I don't have to be condescended at, sniffed Nobby, and pulled one out of his pocket. In fact, he pulled out several dozen, including one with the initials CM-S on it. They were tangled together like a conjurer's flag of all nations, and dragged them with several purses and half a dozen spoons. Nobby wiped his face with the first one, and thrust the entire collection back into his pockets. At this point, he realized that all the men were staring at him. Well, what? He said defiantly. Tell us about this man Keel, said the Major. I don't know nothing, said Nobby automatically. Aye, that means you do know something, said the Major, who was indeed the sort of person who liked this kind of little triumph. Nobby looked blank. The captain leaned forward to whisper to his superior officers. Only under the rules of mathematics, sir, he said. Under the rules of common grammar, he is merely being emphatic. Tell us about Keel, the Major shouted. Tell you what, Major, why not leave that sort of thing to the experts, said a voice. The Major looked up. Carcer and his men had entered the tent. The sergeant was grinning again. Got yourself a little prisoner, have you? He said, stepping forward to examine Nobby. Reckon you've got a ringleader here. Yeah. Told you anything, has he? I shouldn't think so. You need special training to get the best out of lads like this. Ha! He slipped his hand into his pocket. When it came out, the knuckles were ringed with brass. Now then, lad, he said, as the soldiers watched in horror. You know who I am, do you? I'm in the particulars, me, and I can see 2 of you. One of them's a lively lad who's going to help the proper authorities with their business, and the other's a lippy little bugger who's trying to be clever. One of those lads has a future in all of his teeth. Now, the funny thing about me, it's a little habit of mine, is that I never ask a question twice. So, you're not a criminal, are you? Nobby, his eyes huge and fixed on the brass knuckles, shook his head. You just do what you have to do to survive, right? Nobby nodded. In fact, you were probably a decent lad before you fell in with the rebels, I expect, sang hymns and all that. Nobby nodded. This man who calls himself Sergeant Keel is the ringleader of the rebels, yes? There was a moment of hesitation, and then Nobby raised a hand. Everyone does what he tells them. Is that the same thing? He said. Yeah. Is he charismatic? Nobby kept staring at the brass knuckles. I don't know. I haven't heard him cough much. And what do they talk about beyond the barricade, my little lad? Well, justice and truth and freedom and stuff, said Nobby. Uh-huh. Rebel talk, said Carcer, straightening up. Is it? Said the Major. Take it from me, Major, said Carcer. When you get a bunch of people using words like that, they're up to no good. He looked down at Nobby. Now I wonder what I've got in my pocket for a good boy, eh? Oh, yes, someone's ear. Still warm. Here you go, kid. Aw, thanks, mister. Nobby fled. Carcer glanced at the map on the desk. Oh, you're planning a little sortie. That's nice. Don't want to upset the rebels, do we? Why aren't you bloody well attacking, Major? Well, they're not. You're losing your troops to 'em. They hold a quarter of the city, and you're going to sneak around the back? Like you are frightened? Carcer's... Oh, you're going to sneak around the back. Across the bridge I see and up Elm Street. Quiet like you are frightened. Carcer's hand smashed down on the table, making the Major jump. I'm frightened of no man, he lied. You're the city now, said Carcer, a little speck of white foam appearing at the corner of his mouth. They sneak. You don't. You ride right up to them and damn them to hell. That's what you do. They're stealing the streets from you. You take them back. They've put themselves beyond the law. You take the law to them. He stepped back, and the manic rage subsided as quickly as it had arrived. That's my advice, he said. Of course. Know your own business best. Me and what's left of my poor lads, we're going to go out and fight. I'm sure their lordships appreciate anything you feel you can do. He strode at the particulars falling in behind him. Are you all right, Clive? Said the captain. Only the whites of the Major's eyes were showing. What a horrible man, said the Major quietly. Yes, of course. On the other hand... Yes, I know. We have no choice. We have orders. That weasel is right. If the damn thing is there in the morning, I've got no career, nor have you. Show strength, bold front, take no prisoners. That's what our orders are. Stupid orders. He sighed. I suppose we could disobey, said the captain. Are you mad? And then what would we do? Don't be a fool, Tom. Muster the men, get the ox teams hitched up, and let's make a bit of a show for the sake of it. Let's just get it over with. Okay, see you later.